Okay, today we are going to have a little PowerPoint lecture looking at literary techniques, how to analyze literature. We're going to be using the book How to Read Literature Like a Professor, which is a really great story, a really great book written by Thomas Foster, who is a professor at the University of Michigan. Highly recommend this book to anybody who wants to improve their reading and analysis skills, and also to especially seniors who are close to going off into college. Your professor is going to ask you to go home, read a book, come back in a week and discuss it. This book really gives you a lot of techniques and tips. So follow along and we'll enjoy this together. So we've all been there together. You may have seen this graphic on Facebook or Tumblr or some other website. You notice there's a Venn diagram, but in both ovals, neither oval overlaps. So on one side, what the author meant, right here, and on the other side, what your teacher thinks the author meant. For example, for instance, the curtains were blue. What your teacher thinks, well, the curtains represent his immense depression and his lack of will to carry on. What the author actually meant is, well, the curtains were really just blue. And sometimes that's the way it is. We're going to talk about symbolism and the importance of symbolism and what is and what isn't a symbol in just a little while later. But I want to start with this idea of literary analysis and merit and worth, and where we as English teachers think we come up with it. Where do we come up with these things? Um, so this is just while the graphic is funny, and sometimes we are reaching probably as teachers. Oftentimes we're pretty dead on, but it's up to the reader. So, over time, good readers develop this use of a certain language of reading. This is according to Foster. He says that there is a grammar of literature, and that this grammar is a set of conventions and patterns. These are codes and rules, and we learn to employ them when we are dealing with a piece of writing. And the three major tools that we use are memory, symbol, and pattern. And the next slide will go into some more detail about these three rules or patterns that we use to analyze literature. But these are kind of the three. This is where we start. Good readers, good analyzers start with these 3 points. First, let's look at memory. Rolodexes are kind of outdated now. The first point saying spin your mental Rolodex. If you've ever been in an office and the person sitting on their desk has like a little small, almost looks like an index box holder. It holds business cards and they're in alphabetical order. That's a Rolodex. Foster says you got to spin your mental Rolodex, and that you want to look for correspondences and corollaries in the text. So you might think, where have I seen a character before? Where have I seen a theme? Where have I seen this idea somewhere before? Here's an example. Let me tell you a story, and then let's see if you can figure out where you may have seen this character before. So let's say there is an 18-year-old girl who has a father, and he is a recovering alcoholic. He's been drinking for years and years, and he warns his daughter, look, alcohol is very addictive. It's in my genes, and so it will be addictive for you too. Don't drink. It's very bad for you. You can go to a party and hang out and socialize, but drink lemonade, water, pop, whatever, but don't drink alcohol. It's addictive. And the girl agrees to this. Okay, she can handle that. She can handle that, and she doesn't. A few years later, she marries and meets a boy. They have a happy life together, and they have a pretty clean-cut life. One day, this girl goes out with her friends, and she engages in drinking alcohol. It's kind of harmless. It doesn't do her any good. It doesn't do her any harm. She's like, my dad maybe just overreacted. She comes home. She invites her husband to drink some as well, and he's like, yeah, it's actually not so bad. There's nothing wrong with this. Well, everything seems to be going fine, but this life of alcohol becomes more and more regular, and an addiction forms. And suddenly, this girl's life and the boy's life spins out of control. Um, where have we heard this story before? Where do we hear the story of a girl and her dad with a warning not to partake in a particular item? I'll give you a second to think about that. If you said Adam and Eve, you would be dead on. The story of Adam and Eve is essentially the same. A father, God, tells Eve to eat anything she wants except this particular fruit in this particular tree. He tells both Adam and Eve this. Um, they live by this rule for a while, and then eventually Eve takes a bite and gives it to her husband, and they uh, fall from grace. And this is essentially the story I told. So when you're reading a story, and when I told that story, you should spin your mental Rolodex. Where have you heard it before? You know, it seems familiar. Essentially, all stories we tell are just retellings of, a few particular stories from years before. Let's go on to the second point, which is symbol right here. Um, Everything is a symbol of something else unless otherwise proven. Um, if you see something and you're unsure about it, ask yourself, is this a metaphor? Is it an analogy? What does that signify over there? Why is something sitting on the counter? What is the importance of what I am seeing or what I am reading? Here's an example, and this may be the curtains are blue kind of an example. If you are familiar with The Great Gatsby, my juniors last year read this and had to look at literary criticisms. These are works written by other authors. These other authors give their opinions on, I don't know, the society or the effects or symbolism or whatever else. One particular literary criticism is that there is a lot of sexual image in The Great Gatsby, and you may think to yourself, well, this book is written in the 1920s. It's pretty clean cut. There's censorship, and you can't write about sex, and you can't write about affairs and this kind of thing, really. And you would be right. There have been times in history where we have had writers hide what they really mean to say or what they're really talking about because the censors would say, you can't write about that. So Gatsby, this author, would propose that F. Scott Fitzgerald is being quite perverse in the book. So Gatsby lives on Long Island, along with the rest of the characters, and particularly in West Egg, and there's also East Egg. These are these two eggs. So if you can maybe picture this image for me for just a minute. You've got Long Island, if you know the shape of that, outside of New York, and then East and West Egg. It immediately pulls up in my mind, at least according to this author, a phallic symbol that it is supposed to be male body parts. To further support this literary criticism, the writer suggests that F. Scott Fitzgerald describes Gatsby's car as cream colored and that it travels from West Egg all the way down Long Island, and thus proving that this is supposed to be the male anatomy. Now, F. Scott Fitzgerald never hints or indicates in any way that this is accurate. Maybe it's just Long Island, and there happen to be two peninsulas, and the color of the car is just a cream color, and there's nothing more to it. But to the author, to the literary criticism, this is what he sees. This is what he thinks it means. Now, it doesn't mean that it's true, but for that man, for that individual, that's how he's reading the story. So his take on the story will be different than, say, your take or my take. Last one that we need to talk about is pattern. Anytime in a book you begin to see the same sort of situation or event or item occurring over and over and over again, you've got to ask yourself, is this really a pattern or a coincidence? Life typically falls into similar patterns, and books do as well. So experienced readers, people who are paying attention, we have the ability to overlook the details that don't matter, kind of cut to the chase, and see the archetypes at work in the background, what's really important, what's significant, and happening again and again. One of the stories we're going to read, and then there were none. There's one character who constantly is knitting, and Agatha Christie, the author, makes a point of saying that she is knitting, and these are one sentence paragraphs. This character continues to knit, and then 5 pages later the character is knitting, and then 5 pages later the character is knitting. It's a pattern. It's something you're starting to see over and over again. So just to test this out, Actually, we'll end this video and then we will start the next video as the quest. So.